So, I was told the SEC is the best conference in college football. I was told that and I said that last week. I said the SEC is the best conference in college football, and they had a right to be speaking slash complaining about this Indiana nonsense and where they would stand as two lost teams if Indiana were to lose and or win the game against Ohio State this past weekend. And for a second, I was like, okay, yeah, you know, SEC looks pretty good. Indiana may not belong. Indiana loses to Ohio State 15-38. For 1 second, I said that the SEC may have a point. But sadly, the Indiana game happened at the noon slate. Thank you, Big Noon Kickoff, whatever. And the chaos that ensued in the SEC following this was something of legend, honestly. I made a TikTok at the beginning of the season where I said that this upcoming college football season isn't anywhere near what 2007 was. I said that because obviously 2007 had all the craziness with the upsets, starting with App State over Michigan. You had all these teams, Missouri, Kansas, West Virginia, just like beating each other up. The number two team lost multiple times that year. And I said there's no reason why anyone would say that this season had, the guile or even, the setup for a similar season happen, especially when the BCS system is out of control, or it's not in place anymore. Gosh, I love the expanded playoff because the argument now, this is slowly turning into what I think to be a perfect system, not necessarily in what the picks are, but in terms of determining and the conversations around it. This is turning into what college basketball is, where we're really looking at a team's resume. We're really looking at a team's schedule. We're looking at how they played a certain team. The committee could say they're not, but they have to be. When you are picking four teams, you don't really need to be accountable for the other teams that are left out. Usually, it comes to the point of, hey, did that team win their conference championship game, and did that team, you know, have a better resume or better outlook than the other ones. If not, then they're not in. If they did, okay, then you have a better chance of being in. Outside of the Florida State issue, the Florida State issue last year, the Penn State issue in 2016, 2017, that it didn't seem to be a situation where, that system was questioned, or I mean, it was questioned, but you couldn't necessarily be upset, hey, we didn't make the playoff, we deserve to be. But we saw the inklings of that over the last couple years. That's why the expanded playoff is here. The expanded playoff was made for teams like Indiana, who are not going to play in the Big Ten championship game, but they were 11-1. Hopefully, if they take care of business against Purdue, they were 11-1, with their only loss being to what could end up being the national champion or the Big Ten champion at minimum. So I don't want to start with Indiana because I have a lot less lamentations for Indiana than I do with the SEC. The SEC in itself is one of the funniest conferences because, from the bottom up, if you look at that league, it does seem as if, at the bottom you have the Kentuckys who, had their moments this season, had their moments in the last couple of years. I mean, I'm pretty sure they were at a New Year's Six Bowl just a couple of years ago under Will Levis. And, obviously with the additions of Oklahoma and Texas, things have been, very different this year for the SEC. With Texas being, I'm not going to say the cream of the crop. Right now, they're at the top of the SEC to an extent, and they're at the rankings. They're the highest ranked SEC team. But let's just talk about the games. I will say, I have this written down here, and I'm going to talk myself into it, or I'm going to have to just see if it's valid at this point. But right now, I have that Alabama has played themselves out of a playoff berth because this Alabama team, 4-3 in the SEC, wow, that would not happen under Nick Saban. This Alabama team has losses now to Vanderbilt, Tennessee, and Oklahoma. Oklahoma being the worst loss because Oklahoma literally has had one FBS win over the last seven. Oklahoma has been trashed this year, and it's not even like they lost a close game because, in the Vanderbilt game, they lost by one score. The Tennessee game, they lost by one score. They went to Norman, and they put up a good old 3 points, but Oklahoma dominated them the entire game. You're talking about a team in Oklahoma that has two conference wins, two SEC wins on the year. they're at the bottom percentile of the SEC in a lot of things. Their defense is good. Brad Venables is likely on his way out. I don't know how that looks now, as Oklahoma is currently bowl eligible. But this is a really bad loss. I don't know how people feel about the Vanderbilt loss, because Vanderbilt had their moments where people thought they were good, but they're ultimately just a middling team, bottom tier team in the SEC. You now have two losses to two of the worst teams in the SEC. You've played yourself out. I do not see a situation unless we really see chaos. We were talking about the SEC being a 5-bid league for the playoff, and now I can maybe that 3 teams are going to make it from the SEC. And we'll get to that, but wow. It's embarrassing because people thought it would be a continuation from the Nick Saban era when Kalen DeBoer comes in, and I'm not hating on Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer is a fantastic coach. I loved what he did, at Washington, and he took that team to the playoff. But a lot of people thought that he'd go into Alabama, coming off of a year where they made the playoff. They lose to Michigan, a year where Jalen Milroe is like what? One of the best quarterback. I'm not going to say one of the best quarterbacks. One of the more exciting quarterback prospects in the entire nation. And people thought, okay, yeah, this Bama team's going to just still be Bama, even with the addition of Texas, Oklahoma. That's not what happened. Tennessee, I don't even believe in Tennessee. Truthfully, I do not believe in Tennessee. That loss that Alabama has against Tennessee, I look at Tennessee and say, okay, then that win by 1 score you have over Alabama in Knoxville, guess what? I'm not looking at it with rose-colored glasses anymore, because Tennessee, you beat an Oklahoma team at the time. It was ranked, but it wasn't really a good game. It wasn't really a good team. We see this Oklahoma team is bad. You kill that Oklahoma team, and this Oklahoma team ends up killing Alabama. What does that say about Alabama? Alabama's biggest win now would be the Georgia win back in September, but that Georgia win, like I said, Georgia could have easily won that game. I think there was a lot of things that went Alabama's way to have them have won that game. So Bama, I think, has played themselves out. Right now, they sit at 4-3 in the conference. They are now one of 5 3-loss teams in the SEC, with those being Texas A&M, South Carolina, Bama, Ole Miss, and Missouri. We'll get to Ole Miss. Ole Miss played themselves out. I do not see a world where a team that lost to Kentucky, which is second worst team, if we even count Mississippi State, but one of the worst teams in the entire SEC in Kentucky. They lost to LSU on the road. LSU has just been in a landslide going down over the last couple of weeks. They've just terrible, so that's a bad loss. And now Florida. First off, I watched that game. Wow, Jackson Dart. That last couple sequences, Jesus Christ. I don't even know what to say. This is an Ole Miss team that, respectfully, I'm not going to lie. Going into the season, I said this would be the SEC champion and they could go to the playoff. I saw them as a dark horse to win the whole damn thing. This was a team that beat Penn State in the Peach Bowl. And watching that team in the Peach Bowl, I was like, yeah, Lane Kiffin has something brewing. They might have to wait another year. Lane Kiffin is going to have to see what he does with this program next year, because, truthfully, I'm not going to lie, any team that might have called for him or any coach that may have been on their way out, look, I said he might want the Florida job. Billy Napier has done a great job in making sure he's going to be there in Gainesville next year. Florida is hot now. They have 2 ranked wins, first time since 2008, or 2 top 10 wins, whatever it was. First time since 2008 they've done that. Florida is on a tear right now, a gigantic win for them against Ole Miss, and Ole Miss, wow. Just wow. I honestly don't even know what to say about it, because it sucks. Miss has constantly gotten there to the crux of what they need to be, and they just can't take that step further. I don't even know what the Egg Bowl is going to look like. I'm sure they're going to Mississippi State, but this was just a really, really bad loss for Lane Kiffin and co. I think they've played themselves out of the playoff. Of all the 3-loss teams in the SEC, I think they have the least chance of making it, because how do you look at a team that has a Kentucky loss at home, by the way, a Kentucky loss, LSU loss, and a Florida loss all on the same schedule and say, yeah, this team should make the playoff? They've done nothing outside of the Georgia win, because that Georgia win, I said that last week, that might be the best win anybody in the SEC has. But you have the best win, but simultaneously 3 of the worst losses of any team in the entire SEC. So I can't say anything about that. So Ole Miss has played themselves out. What does that look like for the rest of the SEC, though? So the SEC, Georgia has effectively clinched a spot in the SEC title game, and I believe it is whoever wins between Texas and Texas A&M next week will play Georgia in the SEC title game. So let's talk about Texas A&M. We'll talk about that later, but let's talk about the rest of the league. Who is on the outside looking in, and who probably is comfortable? Tennessee's the most comfortable out of anyone. Tennessee's the only team here that, I mean, truthfully, I don't believe in them. I don't think they're that good of a team, but they have a bad loss to Arkansas. That's a terrible loss, and a bad loss, and they also lost to Georgia, but they beat Bama. And if you were honoring a head-to-head, you would have, because if you're already assuming that Georgia's in, because I'm assuming Georgia is safe. No matter what happens in the SEC title game, I think Georgia is safe. They've played the hardest schedule. They've gone up and down all year, but they have been the best team, I think, in the SEC. I think they're safe. If you're going to talk about these three lost teams, and if you're going to say, hey, and Tennessee has 2 losses, actually, as of now. They play Vanderbilt on the road next week, and we'll see what happens there, because could that be a look-ahead spot? Could that be a get-too-cute spot? Because Vanderbilt has already shown that they could beat a team. And I do not believe in Tennessee. I think they're not that good of a team. But all to say, if they beat Vanderbilt, they will be sitting at a nice 10-2, and they will just be waiting. They don't need to worry about the SC title game, because I think of any team, there's going to be a dark horse here. No matter what happens, there might be a dark horse. Of any team in the SEC right now, not named Texas or Texas A&M, Tennessee is probably the safest, because they don't really, if you were honoring a head-to-head with the other ones that they would be compared to, because the only other people you're comparing them to are, again, Ole Miss, comparing them to, not even, I think LSU was done, Ole Miss, Bama, and Missouri out of here, and South Carolina. I think of all those people, Tennessee might have the best win, which is Bama. But let's talk about LSU. I'm officially saying LSU's out of it. I don't think LSU is going to do anything. And we already talked about Ole Miss. Texas A&M. Could Texas fall out of contention with a loss? Well, the committee can talk about preseason rankings all they want, and rankings in general, but you can look at all the ranked wins that you're looking at Texas. Because I don't believe in the idea of current rankings, because it's so hindsight is 2020, and maybe preseason rankings aren't to be believed. But let's talk about Texas. Texas is 10-1. Their SEC wins include, and stay with me here, Mississippi State, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt on the road, Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky. Wow. I'm going to say that's the worst teams, and that's 6 wins, I want to say. I'm going to say the worst teams in the SEC from the bottom up. Okay, ready? Mississippi State, Kentucky, Auburn, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, Florida. 6 of the 7 bottom teams in the SEC are all of Texas's wins. Wow. Is it to say that Texas, if they were to win this game, they'd be in the SEC title game? You'd have to put them in to the playoff. If they were to lose this game to Texas A&M, it's so weird, because I honestly don't know even how to approach this. If they were to lose this game to Texas A&M, they would have a 10-2 record. They wouldn't be in the SEC title game. When you're putting them up against other people that we just mentioned that need to try and make it into the playoff, their resume is terrible. Their resume is absolutely terrible. In fact, I would say their loss to Georgia, right? And if you look at Alabama, we thought that Georgia game, but they still won that Georgia game, right? Ole Miss beat Georgia. So I have to say, like, their common opponent, Georgia beat Texas when Texas was number 1, and Georgia beat Texas in Austin. So is Texas in trouble? Like, I don't know if you could realistically say, like, oh yeah, you dropped them, because there's no reason why 2 weeks out of the season in a 12-team playoff, we're looking at a team like Texas and saying, yeah, drop them from the rankings, but it dropped them from the top 12 if they won game. Because if they lose the one game, they're not going to have a SEC title game to add another loss to their loss column. No, but this is a game that just basically the winner of this game goes to the playoff, maybe? Because if Texas loses, I would not be mad at the committee for dropping them out. I really wouldn't. It's not. It's not. Oh, that they played the schedule. You just play the team in front of you. But like, yeah, but play the team in front of you. But the two times you had a chance to beat it that you needed to, you lost. So you lost to Georgia, and you if you Texas A&M, you lost to Texas A&M. So what? At the end of the day, the benefit of the doubt is there. But why should we give it to you? Because you had multiple opportunities, and we'll get to Indiana. But it's not like Indiana's case. And let me just quickly say something. Texas, they might have really good wins. Not a lot of wins against bad opponents. But let's not forget Arkansas. They walk through that game. Wow. And Vanderbilt, I don't care about the quarterback situation. I don't care if Quinn Ewers or if you were starting Arch Manning or whatnot. I do not care about that. Vanderbilt, you almost lost to Vanderbilt, and you walk through the entire Arkansas game. So it doesn't mean that, people are looking at this game. People are looking at this game more so on Texas A&M side, but I really that Texas might have a problem. And we'll look at when come out tomorrow night or tonight, depending on when you this. Texas might have a problem, and if Texas loses this game to Texas A&M, I don't think that they're sitting as pretty as they think they are. Let's move on to A&M. A&M has had three losses. Their losses being to Notre Dame, South Carolina, Auburn. Auburn game, wow, just M's defense couldn't do anything. What a great game though, a fantastic game. Triple OT, I want to say it went into. Fantastic game. That being said, their losses come from Notre Dame, South Carolina, Auburn. Two of those teams are pretty good teams. Notre Dame, I'll say Notre Dame is good. I'm going to say Notre Dame have the number next to their name, so I'm going to call it a good team, and they have that in Kyle Field, so whatever. They're not 8-3. They play Texas. If they lose, they're done. I don't think there's anything to be said about this team. That Mike Elko has a team sitting on the cusp of the playoff in his first year there. I'm not going to hate on Mike Elko. I'm not going to hate on the Aggies because they were down bad with Jimbo, and this is a very good start. This is a good foundation for them to start at because now you see what you have. Maybe Connor Wegman wasn't it, but you have Marcel Reed, and there's a good chance that this team is going to be better moving forward than they have been. I think they beat. We'll talk about our picks. No, I'm not good as multiple times in 1 week. Maybe I do a preview pod. I don't know. Probably not. But I think they beat Texas. I think they truly beat Texas because I don't think Texas is a very good team. And it's not because again, like you said, you play the schedule that's in front of you. But I think Texas A&M has had more bouts with teams that they either should have lost to or should have beaten or whatever. They've had. If I was talking college basketball, I would go looking at Texas A&M and Texas and looking at their resumes, looking at the teams they played. I'm going to go against the team that hasn't been in as many like dogfights or playing as many good opponents than the other team that has. Texas hasn't really played anybody, hasn't really beat anybody. The time they actually played a good opponent, they lost. Meanwhile, yes, I agree. Texas A&M has lost 2 of their last 3, but on the road in South Carolina, we're going to get to. And then Auburn, just a dogfight. I want the team that's been in the dogfight, and they played Texas A&M at home in Kyle Field at night. I like that for them. Their defense isn't that good. I think it's going to be a shootout, but I think Texas A&M is going to beat Texas, and I apologize. That's the only way that Texas A&M can make the playoff. Whoever wins this is in the playoff, and the other one who loses is done. Let's talk about the dark horse, South Carolina. Okay. The issue with South Carolina is they don't have any good wins except the A&M win. And that sucks for them because like they beat Kentucky, they got missed, they lost to Alabama by 1 score. That's another kind of knock on Bama. Missouri, who's probably going to be ranked this week, but shouldn't be. And then they play Clemson this week. At large. South Carolina, if they beat Clemson, I think South Carolina will make the college football playoff. As an at-large bid. And it sucks because people are going to look at it as the SEC, No, I think it's purely because the SEC, that South Carolina plays a game outside of the SEC, and it's a good game. It's not necessarily, they played Wofford last week, but didn't even know Wofford had a football team. You don't really know these random schools have football teams until SEC team schedules them in the middle of November. But anyway, If they beat South Carolina, I think they're going to be an at-large bid for the playoff because they would have beaten a South Carolina team in Death Valley, a South Carolina team, Clemson team. My apologies. That's 17 right now in the country. That is on the outside looking in for the ACC, but the ACC just got a lot sweeter. It sucks because South Carolina wouldn't have made the playoff on the strength of their own schedule, but they just got some really good wins at a really good time. The A&M win was really good for them, and they've been on a tear since. Since then, since the loss to Alabama on the road, 2-point loss, by the way, they've been on a tear. They've been on a 5-game winning streak. They're hot going into a Clemson team that's fading, truly, in my opinion. So I think South Carolina, if they beat Clemson, they're in the playoff. Let's go to the ACC. The ACC is a conundrum. It's a conundrum to put it lightly because I don't really say I think the ACC bad conference. Now I can't say that now. Now they have multiple teams with 8 or more wins, multiple teams with 7 wins. There's only 4 teams with losing record in this conference. That's NC State, Wake Forest, Stanford, and Florida State. NC State and Florida State, damn. The fall off is crazy. It needs to be studied. But as right now, it's basically put themselves in pole position in the ACC. I think they will play Miami right now as it stands in the ACC title game. And I would pick SMU to win that. But I don't think that Clemson is all the way out, depending on everything that happens in the SEC next week. Clemson could maybe sneak in there. I mean, there are a couple games in the ACC that we're going to be looking at. Probably is going to be very consequential in what happens in the ACC playoff rankings. But look, they could be a 2-bid league. I think no difference between SMU and Miami. If SMU wins, I'm going to guarantee that both of them SMU and Miami go to the playoff. SMU plays Cal, and Miami plays, who does Miami play? Syracuse? Yeah, I think that's fine. Outside of what happens with Clemson and South Carolina, that's another game that I'm going to have to put as, whoever wins makes the playoff. The Texas A&M and Texas game and the South Carolina Clemson game are the 2 games I'm going to easily say, look, whoever wins this game will make the playoff because this is a really good win for them, and they're going to be on the bubble more firmly than any other team. So I'm going to be very wary of both those games. I mean, Texas A&M is going to be probably the biggest game in the country next week because whoever makes it makes the title game of the best league in the nation. South Carolina, Clemson game. Clemson's only favored by 2.5 at home. Wow. That's interesting. Anyway, so the ACC could be really a lot more interesting than people think. I have a team that I want to look at. And I'm not going to say make the playoff or whatever because they're not. They've had losses to Virginia Tech. They've had Georgia Tech, my apologies, SMU, and Miami. But just slowly looking really, really good. And I just want to just give a shout out to Manny Diaz. It was the Penn State Coaches Bowl last week with Virginia Tech, Brent Pry going up against Manny Diaz, 2 former Penn State defensive coordinators. Manny Diaz famously replaced Brent Pry after he left for the Virginia Tech job, and Manny Diaz just left this previous offseason to take the Duke job. 31-28, a fantastic game. Duke's 9-3. That's good on them. A lot of people they've gone under the radar, and I was happy to see them get some AP votes. Not gonna get any playoff love, but I was happy to see them get some votes. Let's move on to what do I have here? If I was the committee, it's hard to make these polls because especially with the new format, it's hard to think of how these things how this will look. In terms of the bracket, in terms of what these teams stand. If I was the committee going into the rankings tonight, and I'll release these on Twitter. Hold on. All right. I'll release this on Twitter this upcoming tomorrow, actually. But if I were a committee, how would I look at these teams and how do I think the committee's going to think? I'm going to go into the committee's head, which I don't want to do that because they're just the worst. I think the committee is extremely, they're very hypocritical on our head-to-heads, but if I were the committee, they'd do, and this is probably what I would do in order to, I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to say what I think they're going to do in order to hype up the teams that are there, that should be ranked or are ranked currently, and basically what I feel do to the playoff. So at 25, I don't think they put Army out. Don't because I think I'll put Army here because I don't think that they're going to say Army's done because Army, yes, they got killed by Notre Dame, but this is an Army team that's been killing everybody else, and they've been so good on the ground. And Bryson Daly's just been the best players in college football. I'm not going to say that I think they're going to be kicked out of the rankings because truthfully, on the outside looking in, who am I going to put there? I'm not going to put Kansas State there. I'm not going to put Wazoo there. They all lost. There's nobody deserving of love. Maybe Louisville, maybe, but I don't think so. So I think I'm going to put at 25 because they're going to keep them there because truthfully they want to have Notre Dame. They want to still have a Notre Dame ranked win, especially depending on what happens with Texas A&M. At 24, I have, I believe, Illinois. Illinois goes up one more. They had a crazy ending to their game. Funny on that game, I will say. I thought Illinois was going to be way better. I don't even think they might have covered maybe a backdoor cover. I'm not sure, but crazy game. Missouri, I think, stays at 23. I think they're gonna keep Missouri in because Missouri gives the SEC a lot more credit than they really deserve. But whatever. Iowa State was 22 last week. Iowa State shoots up the board because right now they've been on a tear. They've been one of the best teams in the Big 12, and I think they're on the outside looking in on the Big 12 championship. They don't control their own destiny. Oh, I was wrong. They're tied for top 3 in the Big 12 right now. Them and Colorado. I think they barely beat Utah. What a crazy turn of events. I don't know how good Iowa State really is. I don't think they're as good as people think. They lost to Kansas. They lost to Texas Tech. Barely survived UCF. Barely survived Iowa this year. Even though Iowa's a lot better than people think. I think I keep Iowa State at 22 because they haven't really done much to further the narrative that they belong there. Arizona State was 21. They shoot up. In their stead, I think Colorado drops down to 21. Colorado, what a crazy game against Kansas. Kansas is on a tear. They're a scary team in the Big 12 right now. I don't want to play them. I don't think anybody wants to play them. Shedeur Sanders had a couple moments in that game. Some crazy stuff from the defenders. And him going up against the ref and all that. Colorado, it sucks, but they don't control their own destiny anymore. They might have been looking ahead. Who knows? But Colorado drops to 21 for me. Then it gets kind of interesting. It's interesting. It gets weird now here. Tulane was at 20, and I think I'll keep them there. But they are one of the other Group of 5 teams that they might be in the playoff because I don't think I trust Boise State as much as people thought that they should be trusted. I would love to know where. I'm actually gonna switch it up. I'm gonna move Tulane to 19. I'm moving Tulane to 19 because I'm adding another team in there because I spoke about the Group of 5 and made me realize who I may be forgetting. Colorado at 20. I'm moving everyone except Missouri up. So that means I'm moving Colorado to 20. I'm moving. I want to say was this Iowa State to 21, and at 22 I'm putting UNLV. Yeah, UNLV. Wow, I think that's my Mountain West champion, guys. UNLV, a great win over San Jose State. They now control their destiny in the Mountain West. I think are now slated to play Boise State in the Mountain West Championship. I'm not sure if Colorado State has anything to do. No, they lost to Fresno State. They play Utah State next this upcoming Friday. So I would assume that right now UNLV's in the driver's seat to play in the Big 12 Championship. That I'm picking them to in that matchup. UNLV looks fantastic. So I'm putting them at 22. At 18, South Carolina was previously there. I think I might have already said who I put there. I'm going to put BYU at 18. Just a terrible loss for them against Arizona State, but Arizona State is looking really, really good. They currently sit at the top of the Big 12, and we'll get to them soon. Who's next? At 17, previously Clemson. I don't think that's not there anymore. At 17, I'm keep putting Texas A&M there. Um, I don't think they're gonna lose as many points for falling. They're not gonna fall too much because at the end of the day, they lost to an Auburn team in Jordan Hare at night in triple overtime. Can't penalize them too much, and I think what the committee is going to do is they're going to look at this Texas A&M team and say, look, we know that if you win this game against Texas, you're going to be in the SC title game. We're not going to drop you below BYU, Tulane, Colorado. Like, I truly do not think BYU, Tulane, Colorado, even Iowa State are better than Texas A&M. So I'm not going to disrespect them by putting them that low. Anyway, above them, and we're already talking about Colorado. At 16 was Colorado. Clemson, I'll probably move up to 16. They're on the outside looking in for now because things could get really crazy in the next couple of weeks. So they're on the outside looking in. I don't think much is going to change in regards to the top 14 outside the ones that fell. At 15, they've fallen onto a bubble. I put Ole Miss here. I'm going to put Ole Miss at 15. The Florida loss is not good. But at the end of the day, right now, they're probably in a better spot than Bama. So I'm actually going to switch Ole Miss and Bama. I think I'm going to put Alabama at 15 because they're in a better. Ole Miss has the common opponent, and Ole Miss has the win. They both have the win over Georgia. I'm actually going to think about this. This is tough. This is tough, guys. This beat Georgia. Bama beat Georgia. Do they have any common losses? That's the thing I have to look at if they have any common losses. Ole Miss lost to LSU, and I think Bama beat LSU. I think Bama might have beaten LSU. Bama beat LSU, so I'm going to put Ole Miss at 15 and Bama over. Like, this is the time where we're really looking into common opponents and the best wins, common win. They each have the same win, but they have a common opponent in LSU, and Bama beat LSU, and Ole Miss did not, sadly. All right, let's continue. At 13, I don't think they're going to put a group of five team. They've never, at least from what we've seen, they haven't put a group of five team outside of 12. I think Indiana drops from 5 to 13. Indiana now is basically one of the outside looking in teams. I don't even know if I want to put Indiana that low. I don't think I want to put Indiana that low, guys. I really don't. Because I haven't done anything to warrant that. So I'm going to I haven't even added them yet. Maybe I put Arizona State all the way up there at 13. If anything, switch Bama and Arizona State at 14. Let them occupy the space that BYU had and put Bama at 13. I'm okay with it. The Oklahoma loss is terrible, though. I will say that. And then keep it what they had. Put Boise State up there at 12 because, granted, they should go down, but Boise State does not look good. What's next? How do we do this? How do we look at the remaining teams and say who's the better one? Because right now, we're talking about rankings. We'll get to the bracket and how that looks like in a second. But right now, you guys can tell me who I'm missing. I might have to move people up because how far do I move South Carolina up? I have not even mentioned them. I'm going to move everybody up and put South Carolina at 15. So at Boise State is at 11. Bama's at 12 because I think they're going to put a 15-6. South Carolina's on the bubble, but they're not as on the bubble as some of these other teams are. Like, South Carolina has an outside chance of making the playoff, and South Carolina and Clemson both have outside chances. But everyone else here, depending on what happens, could see a legit path. They could see a legit path. I'm going to put, especially with the common opponent, I'm going to put Clemson at 15, and I'm going to put South Carolina at 16 to make a 16-15 matchup for South Carolina and Clemson this upcoming week. At 10, to move SMU up there. SMU has looked fantastic. They're going to be the AC champion, in my opinion. According to this, it won't be that, according to the bracket, so whatever. At 9, Tennessee, just whatever. Tennessee is lucky to even be in the top 10, but I don't know what they're doing. We already took Bama out. I think Indiana drops to 8. I think Indiana stays because yes, they got beat, but I think let me put Tennessee at 8 and put Indiana at 9. I think Indiana's in the playoffs still. I legitimately think they are because let's talk about Indiana real quick. For people who are saying Indiana's playoff chances are done, their strength of schedule went up by playing Ohio State. If your only loss on the schedule, yes, you play the teams that are in front of you, but if your only loss on the schedule is a team on the road, one of the best teams in the nation, probably one or two, their only loss is Ohio State, who they lost to by 3 scores, 2 technically, because I do not count that last touchdown, and 14 points come off of special teams blunders. A defense that looks like they belonged out there. I do not think they got embarrassed. Yes, Ohio State's defense is fantastic. But if you lose by I'm gonna say 2 scores coming off special teams blunders off on the road to a team that's already played 2 top 5 teams this season. This is their first top 5 matchup for Ohio State in the shoe. I'm okay with that loss. If that's your only loss on the season and you're 11-1 on the outside looking in, you have a hell of a better case than a lot of these teams, including Notre Dame. But that's neither here nor there. I think Indiana's safe. I think Indiana's at 9. I think they're on the bubble. You don't give them a home playoff game, but I think they're fine. I think, especially with everything that happened in the SEC, the SEC teams can't say, oh, we're a 3-loss SEC team and we want to be in. Guess what? You're looking at your 3 losses. None of you have a better loss than number 2, Ohio State. And I guess we'll get to that. But number 7, we have 10 SMU, 9 Indiana, 8 Tennessee. At number 7, Georgia moves up to number 7. They have a good game against Georgia Tech coming up, but Georgia Tech is weird. I'm not going to just chalk that in as a win for Georgia because Georgia Tech has been weird this season. They've already knocked off a top 5 team in Miami. I think they were in top 5 when they played, but whatever. At 6, I don't know. I feel like I'm missing somebody in because right now we have Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State. Let's just go from the top. Oregon at 1 because they just simply they didn't play and they still lost, but whatever. I don't think they move up Ohio State because at the end of the day is undefeated. They're the only undefeated team. Ohio State at 2. Texas still sadly at 3. Whatever. It sucks, but whatever. I see Texas at 4. Penn State is still living up there. Penn State almost lost to Minnesota. That would have been real chaos in the Big Ten if Penn State had gotten their second loss against Minnesota because I don't know how you put a team with 2 losses, with one of them being Minnesota. Minnesota's still a good team, but I don't know how you do that. And then at 5, I'm going to put Miami. No, at Notre Dame. Notre Dame has no business being up there, but they just beat a ranked team. And that's why I think they're going to keep Army in the rankings because you have no other reason to keep Notre Dame in outside, especially if Texas A&M loses, if Army's not ranked. And then at 6, I'll put Miami. Miami's a weird season. They beat Wake Forest, but they play Syracuse on the road. We'll see what happens with them. So that's my top 25 with Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, Miami, Georgia, Tennessee, Indiana, SMU, Boise State, Bama, Arizona State, Ole Miss, Clemson, South Carolina, Texas A&M, BYU, Tulane, Colorado, Iowa State, UNLV, Missouri, Illinois, and Army West Point. So, next week. Oh, well, first off, let's see what that looks like for the playoff. Because the way it looks right now, I think they will still give the bye because they're the outside. I don't think with the Big 12, they're not going to get the bye. Oregon, number 1, they have the number 1 seed. They have a bye. Georgia has the second bye in my eyes. SMU, or let's put Texas in there. Because I'm not going to quickly make my prediction who's going to win. I'm going to put Miami right there. That's how it looks. And then Boise State with the 4th bye. Ohio State as the 5th seed. As the 6th seed, I think you'd put Notre Dame as the 6th seed. As the 7th seed, you'd probably have Penn State at the at-large. The 8th seed, who else has it would be Georgia. Although I think Georgia moves up to the 7th seed, and Penn State moves to the 8th seed because they won't be in a seed title game. In the 9th seed, maybe I'll put Miami, Penn State. We already put Miami. In the 9th seed, I would put SMU. 10th seed, gave Boise State the bye. Of the top 12, Tennessee, Georgia as the 10th seed is crazy. And and then 11 being Indiana, and 12 being Alabama. The way it looks now, the way I have it set up, Alabama is still technically in because they are in terms of the SEC right now, have the best chance of being in the playoff. If you're looking at the teams with 3 losses, with the common opponents and whatnot, South Carolina would have to beat Clemson, but we'll see. But that's my current seeding. Oregon, Texas, Miami, Boise State having the byes. Fifth seed being Ohio State, playing Alabama as the 12th. Notre Dame at 6, playing Indiana as the 11th. Georgia playing Tennessee as the 7-10 matchup. And Penn State playing SMU as the 8-9 matchup. So next week is going to be very interesting because we have a lot of games that are going to, dictate what happens in this, what we just mentioned in terms of the standings, but playoff and who's not. That's probably Georgia Tech, Georgia. We'll see what happens there. Mississippi State, Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss wins there. South Carolina, Clemson. That's whoever wins that makes the playoff, in my opinion. Notre Dame plays USC on the road. USC, jeez, Lincoln Riley it's a dumpster fire there. And then Auburn at Bama. It's the Iron Bowl, but it's not in Jordan Hare, so I'm looking at Bama to win that. Memphis at Tulane. That is a huge game. That is a gigantic game on Thursday. Tulane is a group of 5 team that's on the outside looking in. I think they're going to be one of the teams that you have to look at and say, hey, depending on what happens at Boise State, UNLV, look. And then Texas A&M at Texas is huge. I think Colorado beats Oklahoma State, so they're not in control of their own destiny anymore. But Kansas State does play Iowa State, and Arizona State does play Arizona on the road. So that game's always great. So that's pretty much it. There's 2 other games, like the Big Ten. Maryland plays Penn State. Maryland never beats Penn State, and then Washington plays Oregon on the road. And yeah, whatever. I think Oregon, Ohio State will be matching up in Indianapolis, but that's pretty much it for college football. The college football landscape is fantastic. This is turning out to be one of the best season ever. So I apologize for any prediction that I made that said otherwise. Look. Catch the Sports Podcast all throughout the college football playoff race and the championship weekend, rivalry week, and everything like that. Check out at Stick to Sports at Noah_Deej on Twitter. Noah Deej on Blue Sky. I have no idea how to promote that yet. And then just check the socials at Stick to Sports on TikTok, at Noah_Deej on Twitter. We already said at Noah Deej on TikTok as well. Instagram's not really whatever, but we'll see. But thank you for watching. This is going to be out on all the DSPs, all your designated streaming platforms, and wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for watching this Sports Podcast.